Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of the Better Together podcast, where we talk to business owners and leaders about the highs, lows, and challenges of building brands and businesses. I'm Sean Sunsvold along with Kelly Sunsvold, and I'm really excited about today's guest, Jason Gorman. Jason is the owner of Jackrabbit Learning Experience, and for over 25 years, he has been designing powerful, vibrant, and emotionally engaging environments for learners of all ages. These include fully online programs for the Harvard Graduate School of Education, patient-centered training for Medtronic's hundreds of thousands of diabetes patients, and sustainability-focused workforce training for the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center. Jason, thank you so much for being here, and welcome to the Better Together podcast.
Thank you, Sean and Kelly. It's good to be here.
Man, we're so excited. As I've gone through your stuff and had an early conversation, I had so many questions to start. Let's just start with, tell us a little bit about you, your career, and how Jackrabbit Learning Experience came to be.
Yeah, the story of me, I think, is that I really struggled in education for a long time. A person told my parents, my guidance counselor told my parents when I was in the 6th grade, I think, that I would never go to college. And so that was when my parents started looking at private school because that was not an acceptable idea for them. I was never a great traditional learner. And I did end up going to a private school, and I really thrived there. And then I went to college, and I didn't thrive there, and I dropped out. And I think between all of these struggles, I think what I gained is a really deep personal experience of what good education looks like and feels like. And that I could see that my peers, they were thriving in ways that I wasn't in some circumstances, and vice versa, right? There's some things that worked for me that didn't work for other people. So really, I think that what drew me into what I do, and what we do essentially is we create primarily digital online e-learning experiences for organizations like the ones that you mentioned at the top. And our job, part of it is about creating the curriculum, which is the content, but really what we do is we help set the stage for every learner to get the most out of the experience that they're in. So given their history, their personal interests, what's important to them right now, what their future aspirations are, what I do, what my company does, is to take the content, but then also really think deeply about what learners need and create an experience that will allow them to the greatest degree possible thrive and to, achieve the things that are important to them.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. I love the story about your background, having, kids of our own. We have one that, the school system kind of gave up on as well. And it can be really discouraging, not only for the kid, of course, but also for the parents. And you just want to do the best by your kids. So how has the right educational environment, it really can completely change the outcome of education. So what do you feel like sets Jackrabbit Learning Experience apart from other when it comes to building other educational content?
There are lots of ways to do this work. And something that we have worked out, because you named 3 really different kinds of organizations at the top, right? Clean Energy, the Clean Energy Center, the Harvard Graduate School of Education, and Medtronic couldn't be more different from each other. And for us as a consulting company and as a company that makes things for other organizations, we have to have a way of getting in, understanding what they need really quickly, understanding what their learners need really quickly, understanding what's important from a technology standpoint, from a learning design standpoint and a learning science standpoint, to what they want to build. And we have to do all that really efficiently, because no organization wants us to come in and mill about for 6 weeks just trying to do discovery and sort of figure out what's needed before we get any work done. And so for us, a big thing that I think is a differentiator is our process. So we have a way of coming into every new engagement, understanding what the needs are, and we always know what the first step is, what the second step is, what the third step is. Now, of course, the way that we work is definitely tailored to each of our clients, because they are all different. They are all unique. They need different things. But from our perspective, we want to always understand what we're doing and what's like, there's a reason that we work in the way that we work. And so that is important to us. It's important to our clients. And the other thing that we have that really know that I'm aware of, other organizations that do what we do does, is we help those organizations also build their own capacity. So if we start creating an e-learning program for somebody and they say, we're thinking we might build our own team, we say, great, that's great. We can help you with that. We can help you figure out who to hire and what your roadmap is and how to build your other forms of internal capacity and how to plan it out. Like, you shouldn't necessarily rely on an outside organization all the time. And so we have that capacity building consulting expertise that we offer as a service as well. So those are a couple differentiators.
That's really cool. And as a curious, kind of just following up with that, like one of the things that we mentioned in the opening and you just mentioned there is like the emotionally engaging portion of it. Like where does that come in specifically? Because I do think that plays into it, that when people are more engaged in what they're watching, they remember things better, they're able to apply it quicker. So talk to me about that aspect of your business.
Well, so engagement and motivation is an absolute prerequisite for anybody learning anything, right? Not just what I do. It's what our kids do at school. It's, if we go to YouTube to learn something, like, oh, my sink is broken, the little thing underneath the sink isn't working, right? I know there's probably somebody has figured this out. They put a video there. I'm not going to go and look for that video if my sink isn't broken. But when it is broken, I'm highly motivated to go in and look. And so I think for us, it's our job to understand why does this matter to the person who's doing this at the end? How are they using it? How can we make this as easy as possible for them to do something with what they're learning, not just store it in their head? So we want to make it relevant to their experiences and their preferences and their likes and the things that they want to do in the future. And we do that by, there are lots of ways to do it, but the first step is you ask people about, you ask them, what do you want? What's interesting to you? And then you help them think about what they're learning applies to the things that they've already been doing. And then you help them build for themselves that kind of new understanding of where the new thing fits into what they already have. And then you help them understand how to build on top of that to get to whatever their goal is, which is another important thing. Helping them understand their goal. They understand that, and they understand kind of why they're doing what they're doing, how it gets them to that goal. That gets you a long way there too. But all of those things are motivational strategies. They're all critical. And those are the kinds of things that we work with clients to help to research about what their learners really want and need and how they feel. And then we think about, well, all right, how does that manifest in a course or in an app? It's a learning app or something like that.
That's really cool. I love the consultative approach to it. And I think so many businesses, they just go into that educational piece and it's like a checkbox, right? It's like this thing we have to do. And so there's not that emotionally engaging piece or that really understanding the reason behind it. And so I think that's really unique for what you guys do in comparison to some other, educational platforms I've seen and designers that I've seen. One of the things that stood out to me both when we first had a conversation and then as I was doing some research today and looking through your website, it was the idea of you're really good at seeing around corners, right? Tell me a little bit more about what that means and how you've been able to apply that with the businesses that you work with.
Yeah, so it's kind of a combination of two things. So I mentioned before these processes that we have, and I think part of the reason to have those processes in place is that it allows us to understand, if we're at step 2, we have a pretty good idea of what steps 10, 11, 12 are going to be. And if something is happening in step 2 that we know will be a problem in step 10, then we can raise it in step 2. And just because it just allows us to say to a client, we understand that you want this. So we can do that. So we have lots of versions of this conversation. We can do that. If that's really what you want, yes. But down the line, it's going to have impacts in these other ways, right? It might take a little longer. It might cost a little bit more money. It might make it a little bit harder for people to understand and sort of get the value that you want them to out of this, right? And so I think part of it is for us, everybody on our team. So there's the process. The second part is that everybody on our team is enabled to advocate for the things that they believe are right for the client and for their product. And so, we're all there. If we see something that may not work out down the line, all of us, it's all of our jobs to say something, right? It's not just getting filtered back to the project leader who has to bring it up. It's all of us need to be on point to make sure that we're leveraging our own experience in a way that's really helping our clients at every turn. So that's really what we mean by that.
Yeah. As you've built Jackrabbit over the last 7 years, right? What's been the biggest challenge in building your company and how did you overcome it?
Well, the world has changed in big ways a few times in the last 7
It
years,
has.
as everybody listening to this knows. So, I had like a year and a half of normal world, right?
Yes.
And when after I started Jackrabbit, and then the pandemic hit. And the pandemic was, we all remember it, but for us in particular, everything kind of froze. There was no business at all. And then there was a really high demand for services like ours because so many organizations needed to figure out some alternative to what they had been doing face to face. So it turned out that we could help. We were positioned to be helpful in a certain way. And I think it increased the profile of what we did in some respects that had nothing to do with us, just had to do with the circumstances, the awful circumstances of the pandemic. And so, the challenge there was, well, I've never lived through any kind of pandemic before. And I had no idea how it was going to impact my business. I actually remember the week before everything got locked down, I met with a friend of mine who owns a similar business. It's much bigger. He's like a Harvard business school grad. He really knows what he's doing. I'm just pretending I know what I'm doing. And he said, but I remember at the time he said, I don't know if my business is going to double in size or get cut in half. And so that to me was a signal like, oh, well, then nobody knows what's going to happen. If he doesn't know, nobody knows. So there was, there's that. And so we had some growth at that time that was great, but I think there were challenges in managing growth. Growth can be as hard sometimes as moving in the opposite direction. And then the second big thing has been AI. And I had this realization pretty early on that AI was going to change our processes around how we do the work that we do, but that it also really needs to change our business model because there are some fundamental things about our business model that just won't work going into the future in terms of what our engagements look like and how we're partnering with our clients and the kind of value they need from us when we're in a project. So we actually, the consulting that I mentioned before, we didn't do any of that. And the reason that we've started to do the consulting is because we recognized that as it gets easier for organizations to do it themselves, because all of these tools are available, they're very easy to use, they're very accessible, they still don't understand necessarily how to run a learning operation. So even if you can make content, that's a different thing than understanding how to, it's a whole field, right? And so we think that we have an opportunity to help organizations take advantage of these tools and technologies and get up to speed. So that's kind of been another big shift for us. And then the last one is, something I hear from many business leaders this year. There've just been so many shifts in policy and funding, and that has its own challenges too. We mentioned we work with a lot of clean energy related organizations. There's been big funding cuts there. We do a lot of work with nonprofit organizations. There's been, a lot of funding cuts there. So, just rolling with these things, trying to figure out, all right, well, who needs us now? How can we accommodate organizations that have less budget? So those have been some of the major curveballs that have come our way.
Yeah, like part of being an entrepreneur is shifting and pivoting very quickly when things happen. If you don't, you just kind of get brushed under the rug. It sounds like you guys have really, I mean, just changed the scope and being able to shift through two very big things. I hadn't thought about it in that perspective, but yeah, I mean, for any business owner who's starting up or entrepreneur, you know, especially in the last 5 to 7 years, I mean, you're dealing with two major things that have happened. Yeah. So kind of shifting a little bit. So you talked about engagement with your clients. What does a typical engagement look like for you with a client, and how long does it take to build what a client needs?
So we're kind of shifting this right now. I'll give you the comparison just to kind of give you a sense of the magnitude and shift, and to draw a bridge between the last answer and this answer. So 3 years ago, like a typical startup engagement would have been a process where we are sitting down, where we are working really hard to understand the technology landscape that the client has, to understand. We'd be doing research on their learners. We're building profiles. We're building out our project plans. We are creating the kind of possible directions for their programs. So kind of designing the early like skeleton of what their program looks like, getting feedback on those things. That would take about 6 weeks. And then we would roll into a pilot. We'd create a pilot or a prototype. So now all of those things can be compressed down into really short timelines. So the amount of time that it takes to do the research about what learners need, much shorter. The amount of time it takes to synthesize all the information that a client gives us. We used to get folders with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of files, and it would take 6 weeks to read through them. And now we still want to read them, but in terms of synthesizing them and doing something, it's just faster now.
Yeah.
So now what we do is we've really shrunk the first step down. The first step, because of what AI can do, first step now is about, let's look at your workflow. This is the most important thing to do first. Before we start talking about the learners, or before we get into those details, let's just think about end to end how we need to work together. We're going to identify where we are using AI. We're going to identify places where we can add in automations or make things go faster, identify tools that maybe we could add into the mix that maybe we haven't used before, we haven't used in a little while. And we can do that very quickly, like a day. So we can get together and really nail that down in a day. And so it's very inexpensive. It's very quick. At the end of that, we can say, when we build this, when we do the next thing, and we'll just lay it out here, all the next things that we need to do, we can have a much better understanding of how much time it'll take, what those outputs will look like, what we're going to need from our client, and what we're going to produce in the amount of time that we have. So the beginning now is much more focused on, it's almost like taking a big step back and designing that process for the maximum amount of efficiency, because that has positive impacts for everything else we do after that. So this is a major, major shift in what we do. So that's big. And then after that, we would proceed in a similar way. We would do those other things that I mentioned, but we're just going to do them faster. We might do them in a slightly different order. We might kind of mix it around a little bit depending on what's there. The nice thing about the AI is it gives us a lot of flexibility in terms of how we work. So
Yeah.
that's good and bad. Sometimes it's bad because you can just keep going and going and going and making stuff, and it's not getting you further. You're just creating a volume of information. So I think it's a bit of a double-edged sword, but that's what it looks like now. And that's the contrast to what it used to look like not that long ago.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing all of that. And one of the things I think that could be that I think is a good takeaway for anybody listening is how much you've already integrated AI into your business and into the workflows. Like, I think there's a little bit of skepticism out there, still a little bit. I know AI is catching on pretty quick, and some people have figured out how to use it. Some people haven't. But, maybe just talk a little bit more of how much more it's streamlined your ability to deliver product and to create these workflows.
Yeah, I would say maybe the fastest way to describe it is creating say 5 years ago. Let's go back 10 years. 10 years ago, to create 1 hour of e-learning, it might, using kind of average, kind of an average level of media and kind of bells and whistles. It's just kind of a terrible, like those things are all serve a purpose, but you understand what I'm saying. Like you can do things
Yeah.
at a very basic level and you can really go crazy and do stuff at very high fidelity. But if you're kind of middle of the road, it could have been 150 hours to create a single hour of e-learning.
Wow.
And it's just because you have a lot of people involved. You get
Yeah.
videographers and learning designers, and project managers. There's just a lot of things to kind of have working together. And I would say now, for the average, I would say on average, maybe it's closer to 40 to 60 hours.
Okay. Wow.
And I think that is going to continue to drop like a stone.
Mhm.
I interviewed somebody on a podcast that I just started last week who told me that his goal, he's working on something that they want it to be 1-to-1, 1 hour of effort to create 1 hour of e-learning, which is just mind blowing. So
Wow.
that is the magnitude of the impact on the work. It's incredible.
I mean, just
For sure.
hearing that it cut a third of your work time, you know, you kind of in the explanation there of going from 150 hours down to somewhere between 40 and 60, that's got to give your team the ability to do a lot more work for not only that client, but, all the other clients that you're working with too, man. So in kind of going in that vein, I'd love to know a little bit more about who is your ideal client and who's a good fit for the Jackrabbit Learning Experience.
Our ideal client is somebody who has a little bit of an exotic use case. So there are a lot of firms that really specialize on like L&D clients, and L&D's typically corporate client. It's going to be a lot of internal training, leadership training, organizational development. We do that sometimes. A lot of what we do, though, is we work with organizations that are really outside of L&D. So we do some higher ed. That's really my background. I worked for a long time in higher ed prior to starting Jackrabbit. I did some other things in between, but I started in higher ed. We do some work in higher ed, but we also do lots of work with other organizations that have never done this before. They don't really know where to start, and they just need help on a lot of fronts. And I think that's kind of our sweet spot. And so this is a good and bad for us. It's good for us because there are a lot of organizations that decide they want to do this kind of thing. The bad thing for us is it makes it a little harder for us to say, well, we do this only for this vertical. We just haven't. There are verticals that we do a lot with clean energy. So we could say we do a lot with clean energy. We do a lot with mental health care. We do a lot with elder care. So those are 3 areas we work in often. But the most honest answer is that it's really for these just more unusual, exotic use cases that aren't just like L&D generally, that need some kind of online program.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that. So what's kind of next? We're closing out 2025 at the time of this recording. We're looking forward to 2026. It's hard to believe we're here. What's next?
Well, I think for us, we really want to continue to double down on this workflow first approach. And I think we're going to turn that into its own offering, where we can just come in and help organizations sort that out very quickly for themselves, even if they don't continue to work with us. We think that as a standalone service, productized service offering, it's an important one. So that's a big part of what's next. And then we have a roadmap of all of the things that we would like to change in our organization in terms of automating them or creating more robust prompts that are really reusable. So we're just going to continue to move forward building those things out. And we've got a couple of other things in the works that maybe too early to talk about. But for me, beyond what we're doing on the product side, I'm really interested in this. I'm really interested in having conversations with people.
Yeah.
I think that we're in a place where we're just seeing the very, very beginning of just being hit with waves of fake garbage,
Mm-hmm.
in our social media feeds, on television, if anybody watches television anymore. But it's just like, we're just going to have there's just going to be so many things to look at. And for me, that has put me in a place where I feel like it'll be really valuable for me to reach out to other people, to have meaningful conversations. It's why I wanted to do this with you guys. It's why I wanted to start my own podcast. I've also started this AI forum for learning professionals. And it's just networking. It's not me presenting.
Yeah.
It's just getting a bunch of people in a room. Let's meet each other. Let's talk about what's working. Let's talk about what the challenges are. Let's see if we can help each other out somehow. To me, that feels like a big part of what's next. Just more of that authentic, real connection, because that's just, for me, that's what I feel like I need. And from the folks that I've been talking to, it feels like that's what a lot of people are looking for.
Yeah, I think, talking about that AI space a little bit more and, what it can do and where you've noticed it in like social media and maybe even some television, you know, us being a marketing company and really being in the social media side of things, Kelly and I both are pretty adept at noticing when social media content is written by AI versus being written by a human. And I'm curious, with as much as you've done with AI, is that something you started to pick up on too, or what has been your experience and, visual with that?
Yeah, definitely. It's really clear when something has been written only by AI. In our case, we want to use these tools. It's really important to use these tools. And so we're trying to find the right balance. I think it would be, for us in our marketing, it would be foolish for us not to use it at all because it's so powerful and there
Hmm.
it's overwhelming to do all the things that can be done in marketing. But for us, we're going to take this when you give us this episode, right? We're going to take it and you'll provide clips and stuff, but we'll also write a blog post, right? We're going to put
Yeah.
it into our newsletter. We'll use AI to take the content that we are making right now in this moment, but we're going to use that as a source content. We're not just hitting a button and just having it spit out something that it thinks might have something to do with something that my business does. I mean, we want to use real source content to make more content using AI. So AI feels like a way to just go farther with original ideas. And then I think there's a real responsibility on the other side of AI making something to go in and really edit it. I mean, I want it to sound like me.
Hmm.
And I have a specific way of thinking and talking and expressing myself. I like it when those things come out in my writing. I'm a painfully slow writer. I'm very happy to have the help, to be honest with you. But I also have spent a lot of time figuring out how to get AI to sound more like me and to accept my idiosyncratic way of communicating. And I found that it's possible to get it to do that. And so I won't say we don't use it, but I will say that there are lots of guardrails.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We talk a lot. We talk to a lot of business owners who use AI, and one of the common threads that we've kind of talked about was it's a tool. I think there's concern about AI and automation taking away our jobs, but the truth is that somebody has to build all that. And sometimes it can go berserk. And so we still need those humans, the human side of things to watch that. And you're right. The authenticity of real content, real humans is starting to shine through. We've noticed that
Uh-huh.
trend in social media where, yeah, it's cute. I saw this video of this deer like running away from the bear, and the woman inside the house was trying to rescue the deer, and it was very obviously AI, but it's those things that it's entertainment, but you have to understand that these are not real. And I think AI, especially in the video format, is getting to be so powerful that
It is.
we're losing authenticity. And so I'm glad that you brought that up. It's a tool to be used by smart humans. So if someone, kind of shifting and closing this up here, if someone wanted to get more information from you about building engaging educational content for their business or organization, how would they get in touch with you?
So, good place is my website. So it's jackrabbitlx.com. You can also search for Jason Gorman and Jackrabbit on LinkedIn. So I'm all over LinkedIn. Spend a lot way too much time on LinkedIn. So that's definitely
Yes.
a good place to get me. You can also search for my podcast that's out, and so there are ways to get to me there. The name of the podcast is the Learning Experience Operations Show, or Ops Show. It might be published as Ops Show. That's another way. Those are probably the best ways right now. We'll probably have some more soon, but those are good.
Awesome.
Awesome. Well, Jason, thank you so much for being here. And for anyone listening, if you're trying to build some educational content and you've got a unique space where it could fit, please reach out to Jason at Jackrabbit LX. Jason's a fantastic person, loves the education. I truly believe he'll bring some unique experiences to your people. So, Jason, thank you so much for being here. We'll put all your contact information in the show notes, and I just appreciate your time today for being here.
Thank you both. This has been great.
Awesome. Thanks a lot.